Hello and welcome to the mill. I am your host, Dusty Crane, and this week I thought to celebrate the return of the Wednesday live stream, I would kind of present in a little bit of a live stream manner, despite the fact that this is not live. But so anyway, I was really glad to have that back. It felt like Wednesday was missing a little something without Jamie doing his live stream, although I'm so glad that he went ahead and took that time for a little bit of self-care and to take care of himself and have a vacation with his lovely girlfriend. And so I thought we would talk a little bit about what the return of that live stream presented, as well as maybe with the release of the pre-orders for the European expansion and the retail release upcoming, what that really meant for Stonemaier. So let's go ahead and start with the Wednesday live stream. Now, Jamie in the newsletter, in the November newsletter, talked about the fact that there is this yearly charity auction, and it's something that I participated in last year. That Jamie goes ahead and asks several media producers or media creators to name a charity of their choice, and then he helps raise money for those charities. And it's something that Stonemaier's been doing for years, and it's super cool. I have the results of that auction right here. There was 11 different, and if you don't know, what they were auctioning off was personalized copies of Wingspan. So you got to choose the bird that was on the cover. You got to choose the birds that were on the four sides of the box, and basically you're gonna be the only person, unless someone else picks the same birds in the same configuration, you're gonna be the only person in the world that has this copy of Wingspan configured in the way that you do. So a super cool prize. It raised a lot of money, as you might expect. So in terms of the bids, there was 11 different auctions, 11 different media creators chosen. The total of the bids was $8,001. Now, Stonemaier matches each one of those bids up to $500, and Fulfill Right matches the highest bid. The total donation for this auction was $14,001 for 11 different charities totaled. That is incredible. I am always blown away watching these charities. I wish I could go ahead and throw out $600 for a board game. It's not in my budget, but I'm so glad that it's in other people's budgets. But Jamie's heard that piece of feedback too, that I would like to do something. I can't do $600 for a board game, but I'd like to do something. So what Jamie did is every year he has a demographic survey, and it's the typical gender, age, some opinions on like what is the most you would pay for a board game, what just those type of questions. And what came of that was if you filled out this survey by, I think it was yesterday as of the time this was filled, then for every survey, Jamie would donate $1 to Cornell Lab of I pronounced this word like 15 times, ornithology. That still doesn't sound right to me. I swear I had it. Maybe it is ornithology. Anyway, Bird Lab, he made a donation of $853 to them, so that's super cool. The pre-order for the Wingspan European expansion is finally upon us. Jamie opened up the doors and started selling the European expansion, started selling the neoprene playmats that were just 5% too small for a 50% discount. And in addition to that, the Swift Start guide. So the stuff that we learned, and those things are still on sale today. But the thing that we learned from that Stonemaier live stream that returned was, if you don't want the neoprene mats that are just a hair too small, you'll actually be able to get them. They're going to be printing the ones with, without any 5% too small issues. Probably second quarter of 2020 is when those will be available. Another thing that was cool that came out of that live stream was that Charterstone is actually actively being printed again right now, so that will be available again soon. That's something that's maybe been a little hard to find, and hasn't been in the Stonemaier shop, certainly. So, that kind of brings me to the Wingspan European expansion. And what I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit was the fact that Jamie has posted on his blog that he's done a number of things differently this time around. The first thing he did for this particular release was, one, he let reviewers post pretty much as soon as they wanted to, and reviews were available I think up to like a month before even the pre-order opened. So it was a period of time where it was like, just do it whatever you want this time. Let's not even have a review embargo be a part of this conversation. So for one, that was available. The second thing that Jamie did was he kind of pushed people toward their friendly local game stores and towards their online retailers of choice, because he said, I'm going to go ahead and make the pre-order open on the 9th. It's going to be worldwide availability on the 22nd. So really, unless you're a Stonemaier champion and you want to take advantage of your benefit of the free or discounted shipping, then just order from, who you want to order for, support who you want to support. If that's Stonemaier, cool. If it's your local retailer, that's cool. Another thing he did was he made all of the information that any retailer would need to do pre-orders. He made that all readily available right up front. I think as early as a month. Usually like that last bit of information is held until the pre-order date, so that when he opens pre-orders, then kind of like now that's when retailers have that information to open their pre-orders. They get that last bit that they need. This time it was just Jamie was accepting pre-orders well after you could go ahead and put a pre-order in at Miniature Market or Cool Stuff Inc., something like that. And so I thought there was a couple of reasons that he may have done that, aside from just, his usual experimentation. Another thing that he did, which I thought was smart, was he said, pre-orders start on this date while supplies last. It wasn't from day 1 to day 4, this is the pre-order window. And I think what that does and what that allows for is if he sells out after day 2, you don't have people on day 4 going, I thought I could order this thing. I thought I could get this thing, on my payday or whatever. I could wait until the 3rd day or the 4th day. I thought that was something that I'd be able to do. What this does is it feels to me like if he says, I open up pre-orders on the 6th and you wait until the 8th and it's not available, you're like, man, that's on me. If you say I'm taking orders from the 6th till the 10th and you sell out on the 9th and I come here on the 10th and I can't get it, then that's on you. Like that, I feel like most people would be like, you said it'd be available. Like, what's going on? And I think even if you toss in that caveat, while supplies last, I still think people are like, well, you should have had enough supplies for that 4 days. So I really do think that it's to the benefit of Stonemaier to go ahead and just say, this is when we open pre-orders, while supplies last. I think that kind of puts the onus on the consumer, kind of puts the onus on us to, if this is something you want day 1, minute 1, this is what you got to do. You got to go ahead and get out there. So I think that was a smart thing. Now, normally by this time, this is, 3 or 4 days after, I think this is the 4th day after that pre-order is open, there's still copies of the Wingspan European expansion. You can still buy it from Stonemaier's website. And I wonder, is that a bad thing? Because this right here is a good thing. I really like what the European expansion does, but why is it still available? Now, I don't believe for a minute, I mean, we talked about last week that this thing sold 120,000 copies, Wingspan, not the expansion. Jamie's not going to go out and print, Stonemeier's not going to go out and print 120,000 copies of the expansion. That's crazy. There's not a 1-to-1 ratio between games bought and expansions. There's a ton of people that are of the opinion, I don't buy expansions, or it's good enough the way it is, I don't need to add more stuff. So I think there's also a situation here where Wingspan is the critical darling it is, and it is the breakout hit that it is for a number of reasons that don't fall into traditional board game, I guess, marketing or hype or whatever you want to call it. Wingspan was widely adopted by birders. It was adopted by a community that does not typically, there's not a whole lot of crossover, it would appear, because, I mean, you see all the time, like, Audubon or different bird preservation or, birder societies are promoting Wingspan, where they're not out there promoting, other board games. And if they have been promoting Flock and other bird games, I wouldn't see it anyway. But it seems like, with this thing getting NPR articles or something, it's really something special, which we know as, Stonemaier fans, but it's not something that, maybe Joan down the street who loves birds, much she's not learning about games the way we learn about games, or in the avenues that we learn about it. So they're not consuming podcasts or websites on board games. So that kind of led me to a question that Stonemaier is ultimately going to have to answer or address in some fashion, not necessarily to us, because that's beyond us, but how do you tell a non-board gamer about an expansion to a game they love? Now, it's not like you're going to buy TV time. I think ultimately you're also not going to have them pursuing the Wingspan expansion without some way of communicating that it exists, because I think to somebody who's not into this board game community, that expansions are not a common understanding. It's just not common knowledge. So like, I wouldn't expect that, somebody who grew up with Monopoly or Life or whatever, you don't see expands, you don't add dogs to Life, add dogs to Monopoly, add, something else, to these games. It's expansions don't really exist outside of our little community of board games. There's not an expansion for Solitaire. There's not an expansion for Rummy. At least not that I'm aware of. Anyway, I could be talking, but I mean, so how do you let them know that, hey, you really, really, really like Wingspan? What I think Stonemaier should do is, I think they should advertise in these different journals, these different, so for example, Audubon, if they have a magazine, I'm sure they probably do, or maybe they just have website, buy ad space in these non-traditional areas to let people know that these expansions are out there, because I'm not sure what the ratio of gamers to non-board gamers are that bought Wingspan, but I know it's significantly higher than, let's say, Scythe. So how do you let people know that it's available? I think that's a question that Jamie has to ask. That's why I also wonder is that why you can still buy the expansion at Stonemaier's website, or is it because he made it easily available to all the different retailers, or the online retailers, to the the friendly local game stores, that they knew what they were getting well in advance? That's my question. Is Wingspan coming down? Is this nearing the end of the crazy demand, or is it just another challenge, or is this going to be another one of those situations where Wingspan just kind of blows our minds in terms of like what it's doing and what it's capable of? I mean, are people going to keep pursuing, oh, I loved Wingspan, I wish there was more birds from different continents? Well, hey, guess what, there are. That kind of thing. Or is the European expansion, is this going to be a one and done? Is this going to be a situation where Wingspan hit critical mass, and then those of us who like it buy it, but it's not in the volume that makes sense to continue? I don't imagine that is necessarily the case. I think I do think that even if Wingspan fan base shrank down just to Stonemaier fans, or just the people who are fans of that game, I still think there's going to be enough demand from board gamers to keep this thing afloat and to keep us in expansions for continents to come. At least I certainly hope so. What do you think? Like, why is Wingspan still available in the Stonemaier shop? But I should mention, it is sold out everywhere else that I looked, in terms of like typical board game places. So Miniature Market, it's sold out. Cool Stuff Inc., it's sold out. A couple of other different board game places I looked, it's sold out. Even Barnes & Noble is selling this thing. It's not necessarily sold out there, but I don't know how they usually handle their allocations, and they're not actually sending their stuff out until I think the second week in December. So I don't know. I'm curious to see really, I mean, what kind of numbers the expansion pushes, and not because it matters to me as a gamer. I mean, I don't really care how popular something I enjoy is in terms of like, sales or anything like that. But it's more out of curiosity than anything. I think it's just something that kind of fascinates me, the numbers and just kind of, in particular, how Wingspan has kind of taken interest and taken off outside of the typical, the typical board game sphere. So that is all I have for you this week. It was just, talking about the return of the Wednesday live stream. How happy were you to have that back? Oh, another thing I should mention, someone has started posting all of Jamie's videos in podcast form. Currently, it's available in Apple Podcasts. I'm sure, actually I saw that it was out on another website. I could be totally wrong. I think it was like Podbean or something like that. I'm not familiar. But there are different places you can get it. So if you have been missing Jamie's content because maybe you have a long commute and you're not watching videos on the commute, but you're very interested in what he has to say, that's available in podcast form. I'll go ahead and toss a link to that in the show notes. And that's all I have for you this week. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Bye.